And Andrew Furey is the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Hi, Premier. Good to have you back on the show. Thanks for making the time.
No problem. Hopefully you're not melting up there.
Sort of. We are a little bit, but we'll get to another sort of icebreaker, and that's around, Premier, your requests and your legal challenge with equalization. And I wanted to start off with a simple question. The federal government happens to be made up of Liberals. You're also a Liberal. Why aren't you talking to them about this instead of taking them to court?
So we are talking to them about it, and let me be clear, this is a problem that goes across political lines, goes across political colors. This formula hasn't been changed since 2008, in which Prime Minister Harper at the time changed the formula and put in a fiscal capacity cap, which is systematically hurts Newfoundland and Labrador and Saskatchewan. So while it may appear that the timing is one Liberal against the other, that's not the case at all. This is frankly Newfoundland and Labrador standing up for what we think is right and just, and it's a question of fairness for us. It has less to do with political flavor, political color, and more to do with what's right and what's fair for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
And I certainly do understand the fairness argument. I covered politics out west for a number of years, and I have covered this issue because the ask from those provinces has come frequently and furiously for a very similar thing. The federal government, though, in this iteration, has had a number of opportunities to meet. They've made changes only at the very periphery. They have not taken any large-scale changes to heart, essentially. Again, is there a reason that you're going to court? Are you unconvinced that they will?
Well, I think you just articulated it. I think, I think we've had informal and formal conversations about the structural issues that exist in the formula and the subsequent unfairness that is perceived and is real for Newfoundland and Labrador. And subsequently, we needed to elevate and accelerate this conversation, both with the federal government and more broadly, Vassy, on a national stage. Speaking with Premier Eby last week, frankly, I think he'd be willing to say that he was shocked with some of the quantums that when we looked at it together with respect to equalization, and how Newfoundland and Labrador gets zero, and how British Columbia gets zero. If you look at how it's been distributed, just as an example, from 2010 to 2023, Quebec and the Maritime provinces combined got over $200 billion in equalization. Meanwhile, British Columbia, Newfoundland and Labrador got zero. So it is a question of fairness, and I hope the federal government sees that. I hope now that there is potential court action, that it will accelerate what could be a diplomatic solution and reevaluate the formula in a more fulsome way.
Have they shown you any shown any willingness in your conversations? Today we asked, one of our reporters asked the finance minister about this issue, whether she was prepared to make any changes. The specifics of the formula, obviously, she said, are of great interest to provinces and territories. They are regularly on the agenda for the meeting of the federal finance minister, and provincial finance ministers and officials discuss them regularly, and that is as it should be. She said she's been in touch with you. Has she shown any willingness to you directly to amend the formula?
Look, the Deputy Prime Minister and I have a great relationship, and I believe she's an excellent finance minister, and we have a good relationship. However, the formula, the spirit of the formula is not, our argument is twofold, so let me start with that. With respect to the Constitution, we don't believe that the spirit is being reflected in the actual formula itself. So the Constitution, as you know, states that there should be reasonable level of services for reasonably comparable level of taxation. Right now, there is no proxy for services. So if you look at a province like Newfoundland and Labrador, we're 3 times the landmass of the Maritime provinces combined, with 1/4 of the population. So we have significant geographic, historic, density, demographic issues, structural issues in delivering similar level of services to, for example, our friends in Prince Edward Island. And that's not knocking them in any way, shape, or form. We just want the formula, as it should be, to reflect the delivery of services, and right now it does not. So if you take a formula...
the federal, sorry to interrupt, pardon me, Premier, but the federal government's response to that is to provide us with documentation of all the federal transfers that go to Newfoundland. Over $1.1 billion, they say, in major transfers this year. Outside of equalization, it is fair to say that the federal government has increased transfers to provinces, including yours.
If you look at all the sum total of formalized transfer payments, I'll say that, Newfoundland and Labrador gets about $2,000 per capita. If you look at Quebec, it gets about $3,100 per capita. If you look at provinces like Manitoba, $4,500 per capita. The other maritime provinces around $4,000 to $5,500 per capita. So there is, and I don't take the argument of these one-offs, because if they want to compare apples to apples, we should compare apples to apples. We'll look at the battery plants, we'll look at the $750 million for asylum seekers, we'll look at all of it. I'm happy to have that conversation. Perhaps we should. But that is a false argument, because as we know, within this federation, there are one-offs for many provinces for different issues. So to single out one-off for Newfoundland and Labrador and make that a divisive proposition, I don't think is certainly something that we should be comparing, unless we're comparing all the one-offs.
So then let me circle back to my original question, which I didn't get an answer to, which is, has the federal finance minister shown any willingness directly to you to amend the formula?
Well, she's shown some willingness to amend what I would say is the calculus of the formula in terms of establishing what's included or not included in the taxation parameters. But I have yet, and I look forward to a conversation with her, and I think we can have a fulsome conversation about things like the fiscal capacity cap, which was inserted to look at natural resources differently and actually punishes Newfoundland and Labrador. So while there's been some willingness on the taxation side, I'd like to see a more broad approach, a broader willingness to discuss things like the fiscal capacity cap and the contemplation for delivery of services. I mean, that's what was contemplated in the Constitution in 1982. Right now you have a formula which conceivably is A minus B equals C, and we're only considering A and C. Other countries with similar schemes and similar programs as Equalization do have proxies, by the way, for equivalence of services. We don't, and I think we should.
I want to switch gears for a moment before I let you go, Premier, because this isn't the only point of friction between yourself and the federal government. The carbon tax has been front and center for a number of months and has cost you politically at the provincial level. The Prime Minister has said that you are bowing to political pressure by voicing your opposition to the carbon tax. Is he right?
No, I mean, we've expressed our opposition to the carbon tax really since I became Premier. So it's not bowing to political pressure. This has been our position all along. I will say that the Prime Minister has shown a willingness to alternatives to the backstop. I think that was somewhat new news to us after 2021. So I'm happy, and our government is working hard right now to show that Newfoundland and Labrador can meet its targets without a carbon tax. We will meet our targets without a carbon tax. And I look forward to seeing a response from the federal government.
So, sorry, your impression is that the federal government is okay with your province coming up with some alternative to a carbon tax? Because they have not said that to Canadians. They have insisted that everyone needs a consumer carbon tax in some way or form, as long as it's, you know, aligned with the backstop. So you wouldn't need the backstop, essentially, if you had something.
Yeah, so we're looking at, so they have, as you know, there's different, they have a willingness to entertain a different system, like cap and trade. And I know Manitoba is looking at proposing a made in Manitoba solution. Newfoundland and Labrador will be coming forward with a made in Newfoundland and Labrador solution. My problem with the carbon tax, as I've said all along, and I think I may have said to you or on your program before, is in Newfoundland and Labrador right now, it just simply doesn't work. Whenever you design a policy, you have to ask, what is the intent of the policy? The intent of the policy is to lower emissions. So let's just park the conflation of rebates and the fiscal implications. It's to lower emissions. So in Newfoundland and Labrador right now, people who want to change can't change. And we perhaps when the program was designed back in 2015, we thought we'd have more infrastructure available. But right now, Newfoundland and Labrador, it does not have necessarily the ability to change. So absent the ability to change, what is this tax accomplishing and how is it changing behavior? So
They're
fundamentally
modeling,
that
again, sorry to interrupt, Premier, but they're modeling from the, not their modeling, the Canadian Climate Institute, which is funded by the government, has assessed through their modeling that it will do that. If we isolate the policy objective, as you point out, of reducing emissions, that it will do so by 2030 by anywhere from 9 to 10% of the total reduction in emissions by that time.
100%. But that's for Canada by large. That's not for Newfoundland and Labrador. So it goes back to my original point about the structural challenges in delivering services like electric vehicles, like charging stations, to a population of 530, 540,000 that has the lowest population density in the country, that it has challenges with respect to growing economies in rural and remote areas. So that's the problem. I don't disagree that it will work in Vancouver, or work in Montreal, or work in downtown Toronto, perhaps in southern Ontario, but the density and the investment required to achieve that goal, to allow for options to change, to allow for the policy to actually work and drive changing behaviors, is a struggle for Newfoundland and Labrador right now, given our structural issues.
I just have time for one question. I want it to be a political one before we leave, because I referenced those by-elections.
None of this was political? I
Yeah,
thought
I
it was
know. I referenced those by-elections because we've been watching them from the federal scene with great interest, and the comments that come out of it. How unpopular is this policy, and do you think you'd lose an election over it?
Look, it's not my policy. It's not my tax.
But you're wearing it.
Yeah, but we've told the people of Newfoundland and Labrador we oppose it. In fact, what we've done is when the carbon tax went up, we cut the gas tax here in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's the second lowest in the country. So we're trying our best to mitigate the carbon tax. That is a federal tax. And while it is we will continue to make that argument for Newfoundlanders and to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We'll continue to make that argument for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians on a national stage.
Are you worried you're wearing it, though? You must be after those by-elections.
Well, we had two by-elections. We won one in a traditional conservative district that's been conservative for 2 decades, I think. People forget that. So within the last 6 months, we won one, lost two. That's not unusual for an incumbent government. But certainly we hear loud and clear that the carbon tax is an issue across Newfoundland and Labrador. It's not one we support. It's not one that I have particularly ever supported. While I can understand the concept behind it, it just is practically not achievable in Newfoundland and Labrador right now.
Okay, Premier, I'll leave it on that note. Appreciate you making the time as always. Thank you.
Great, no sweat.